They told me I wasn't getting a single cent of the family business, so I built my own and bought theirs. For 26 years, I believed I was part of this family. I found out at my father's retirement dinner that I was just free labor with a nice smile. Let me back up. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that I spent 12 years working at my father's logistics company, starting in the warehouse at 17, moving up through dispatch, then operations, then finally running the entire Western Regional Division by the time I was 26. No shortcuts. No favors. I worked weekends while my older brother, Adrian, played golf with clients and took 3-hour lunches he called networking. My father always said the company would be split between us when he retired. 50-50. He said it at Christmas. He said it at my college graduation. He said it so many times I stopped questioning it. Then came the retirement dinner. 40 people in a private room at a steakhouse downtown. My father stood up with a glass of wine, tapped it with a fork, and announced that Adrian would be taking over as CEO. Full ownership transfer. My name wasn't mentioned once. I sat there smiling because that's what you do in public. But my hands were shaking under the table. After dinner, I asked my father directly. He looked almost bored by the question. He said, Adrian has a family to think about. He needs stability. You're still young, you'll figure something out. I asked about the 12 years I gave the company. He said, that was your job. We paid you a salary. I asked about the promise. He said promises change when circumstances change. Then my mother chimed in, the line I will never forget as long as I live. She said, don't make this ugly. Be happy for your brother. I left that dinner and drove home in silence. No music. No phone calls. Just replaying 12 years of 18-hour days, missed weddings, missed birthdays, all for a company that just told me I was disposable. Here's what they didn't know. 6 months earlier, a former client of ours, a mid-size regional distributor named Halcyon Freight, had approached me privately. Not my father. Me. They were unhappy with declining service quality on Adrian's accounts and wanted to know if I'd ever consider going independent. At the time I said no, out of loyalty to a company I thought would eventually be mine. That loyalty died at the steakhouse. 2 weeks after the dinner, I called Halcyon back. I told them I was ready to talk. Not just talk, build. I had spent over a decade learning every operational weakness, every client pain point, every inefficiency my father's company refused to fix because Adrian didn't understand the operations enough to know they existed. I didn't take a single client list. I didn't take a single document. I didn't need to. I had it all memorized, because I had built the systems myself. I resigned quietly on a Friday. No dramatic scene. No confrontation. Just a 2-line email and a returned company laptop. Within 3 months, I had incorporated my own logistics company with 2 former colleagues who left with me, people who had been passed over for promotions in favor of Adrian's golf buddies for years. We were small. We were scrappy. We worked out of a shared office space with folding chairs and a single printer that jammed constantly. But we were fast. We were honest. And we understood the industry better than anyone at my father's company, because we were the ones who had actually run it while Adrian took credit in board meetings. Halcyon Freight signed with us first. Then 2 more clients who had been quietly frustrated with declining service under Adrian's leadership followed. Word spreads fast in this industry. Within a year, we had gone from 3 people in a shared office to a real operation with our own warehouse space. Meanwhile, back at my father's company, things were unraveling. Adrian had never actually run day-to-day operations. He had delegated everything to me for years without realizing how much of the company's success depended on decisions I was making quietly behind the scenes. Once I left, service quality collapsed. Delivery windows slipped. 2 major accounts left within the first 6 months. Then 3 more. I heard about it through mutual industry contacts, not my family. My parents didn't call to check on me. Not once in that first year. As far as they were concerned, I had thrown a tantrum and would come crawling back eventually. I didn't call them either. 18 months after that retirement dinner, my company had grown enough to start actively competing for the same regional contracts my father's company used to dominate. We won a bid for a client that had been with them for 9 years. Then another. Each time, I felt something settle in my chest that wasn't quite satisfaction and wasn't quite peace. It was something closer to proof. Proof that I had never needed their name attached to mine to succeed. The moment everything changed came almost exactly 2 years after the dinner. My father's company was hemorrhaging clients and cash. Adrian, it turned out, had also made a series of expensive equipment purchases based on bad projections, assuming growth that never came because the operational backbone, me, was gone. The company was quietly put up for a private sale to cover mounting debt. Not a public sale. A desperate one, handled through an intermediary broker to avoid embarrassing the family publicly. I found out because the broker reached out to my company. Not knowing our history, they simply saw us as the fastest growing competitor in the region and a logical buyer for certain assets and client contracts being sold off. I sat with that information for 3 days before deciding what to do. Then I made an offer. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. I offered to acquire the Western Regional Division, the exact division I had built and run for years before I left. The same division my father had handed to Adrian at that dinner without a second thought for what I had contributed. The broker didn't know I was the estranged daughter until the paperwork stage. By then, it didn't matter. Business is business, and my offer was the strongest one on the table. I didn't gloat. I didn't send a message. I let the paperwork speak for itself. The day the deal closed, I received a text message from my mother for the first time in nearly 2 years. 4 words. Is this really necessary? I typed back 6, you taught me not to waste opportunities. I never got a response. Adrian and I haven't spoken since the sale closed. I heard through a former colleague that he's taken a management job at a different company now, a smaller role than the one he had, a role that actually matches the experience he genuinely has, rather than the one he was handed. As for me, I run a company built entirely on my own decisions, staffed largely by people who were once overlooked in favor of someone else's last name, operating out of the very warehouse division I once managed as an employee, except now I own it outright. I didn't do this out of revenge, even though I understand why it looks that way from the outside. I did it because I finally understood something that took me 26 years and 1 humiliating dinner to learn. Loyalty without respect isn't loyalty. It's just leverage someone else is using against you. They thought cutting me out would put me in my place. Instead, it built me a company they eventually had to sell to.